Hey guys, Mike here. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 2 of Why Are We Here? So, in episode 2, before we get on to some of the learning videos we'll be doing in this series, I wanted to go over and kind of a couple things that happened in my life, two particular things that shaped and molded me, not necessarily for the positive, but that molded me early in my life. And once I'm done telling these two stories, I'll kind of share with you why I'm sharing such personal information. I'm generally pretty private about this kind of stuff, but there's a reason why I'm sharing with you. And I think sometimes hearing other people's stories and what they've been through helps us in some ways, some cathartic way. So let's go with what happened really before I was even 6 years old. For story number one, let's digress a little bit. I was born August 26, 1962 in Burbank, California, to my mother, Barbara Sue Lawrence. And that's where I was born and raised in my very young years in Los Angeles, basically. From what I've been told about my mother, she was a beautiful, passionate, hardworking woman, very athletic too in her younger years, so that's great. My father, on the other hand, I didn't know who my father was. He wasn't spoken about. I never saw a picture. I didn't know his name. And honestly, until I was 31 and searched for him, I didn't know who my father was or where that side of my family was from. So from what I've been told, my mother was a very hardworking woman, like I said, but was really struggling to make ends meet. She was a single mother with no other financial help. And as I got to be 2 or 3 years old, my grandmother, my mom's mom, moved from Oklahoma to LA to kind of help take care of me and just help my mother raise me. I don't know exactly, I don't remember this, but from around the age of when I was 4, my mother got sick. She didn't know what was really wrong with her. This is the 60s, so when she went to get checked, she found out she had breast cancer and was pretty advanced stages of it. Back in those days, I don't think a lot of women got, mammograms, things like that. They kind of, a lot of times when you found out you had breast cancer, it was really far gone and almost too late. She bravely fought it for almost 2 years, had double mastectomies. I heard she was very brave and strong with it, but she finally succumbed to it when I was just shy of 6 years old, and she was only 28 years old. This left me with no mother, no father, no siblings, and really all that was left was my grandmother that was my extended family on the one side. I've thought about this a lot over the years. I can't imagine being 26 years old and basically be given a death sentence. She did fight it, but it was so far gone, she didn't have much luck, and I think the advancement in breast cancer wasn't where it is, of course, today. So, as my mother was fighting it, she was also had the realization that she probably wasn't going to live very long. So they had to decide what to do with me. In the end, my grandmother took me. She legally adopted me, and before I knew it, I was relocated to the beautiful city of Sonoma in Northern California. One thing that I felt very lucky and blessed for was that I got to live in one city my whole childhood. So when I got to Sonoma, I was 5.5, 6, and I started kindergarten. And I lived in that town of 10,000 people, which I loved being in a small town, from kindergarten all the way through high school, and even started junior college, going to Santa Rosa Junior College in the nearby town. The transition with living with my grandmother wasn't hard for me because you know how little kids don't really see age. So when I was being raised by my birth mother and my grandmother, I called them both mom. I saw them both as mom. My grandmother she's probably in her 40s, so she wasn't that old then. But so all of a sudden, I was living with my grandmother, and I'll refer to her as my mom because that's the only mother I remember. And on that note, I think it's interesting how the human brain works. That some people say we don't have cognizant memory till we're 5 or 6 years old, but I don't have a single memory of being alive until I showed up in Sonoma, and it was like my life clicked on, my movies in my head, everything, all my memories. And I'm personally convinced it's almost like because of the hurt and maybe I was told that I was loved very much by my birth mother, and I loved her like crazy, and we were very close. So I find it interesting that I don't have a single memory. So I'm convinced it's almost like almost like having PTSD. It's easier in your mind, emotionally and mentally, to block things out that like women that have been raped, or men that go into war, men or women that go into war and see trauma. Sometimes it's better to block it out than it is to actually see it and cope with it. And so I'm convinced that that's what I've done. It's because I just think it's impossible, all the things that I did with my birth mother, and not have a single memory of it. It was like like I said, my life turned on at 6 years old. But anyway, so the interesting thing about all of this was that I didn't know I was different at first. And that's one of my two things that I'm going to tell you about that was super, super hard for me. I started as I got to Sonoma and started making friends and going to school and things like that and playing sports. I started making friends, and my reality was nothing like anybody's that I knew in that whole town. Maybe there was somebody, but I was the one kid that had my situation like it was, and it became it just became a wearing thing on me. As a kid, I didn't know why. Why was this happening to me? Why is there something wrong with me? Do I not deserve love from a mom and a dad, from siblings, uh, from a big family, things like that? It weighed on me, and as I got older, I'm talking like in my single digits into my teens, it really, really bothered me. And I'll give you some examples why. One of the couple examples I can think of that started making me feel like there was something either wrong with me or different or non-deserving was my mom started going to, I won't give you the name of the church, but at 10 we started going to a church, which normally should be a good thing. I don't practice any kind of formal religion now or go to church or anything, but I enjoyed it because I was an only child with a grandmother, and no siblings. So like there was youth activities, and when I got a little older, church dances and sports and things like that. So I liked it for the social aspects. But the church that I went to tended to have very large families, and all my friends from church had huge families. And what it did was it made me feel worse and worse about my situation, about myself. That this is normality. Not everybody has huge families, especially nowadays. But I mean, the smallest families were 2 and 3, but they had siblings, and the church actually made me feel more and more like there was something wrong with me and that I wasn't deserving. And it was really, really hard on me. And as I got older and got more conscious about everything, it actually did reverse. It made me push away from all this because it was a constant reminder to me that I wasn't like anybody else and I wasn't deserving of that, and I must be a black sheep or something. But why wasn't I deserving of all those things that everybody I knew had? The other example I have for having this put in my face that I'm not like anybody else, and not in a good way, was I was blessed to be exceptionally athletic. And I not only was gifted athletically, but I think my situation with no siblings and nobody around, that was my happy place. Not only did I excel at sports, but it gave me confidence. I didn't have confidence in many other areas at all. I wasn't a particularly good student. I think I had ADHD. It wasn't a thing back then, but I definitely think I had it. And I was one of those smart kids that didn't do well in school and had struggled. And but I was excellent at sports. And the hardest thing for me was also not having a family come watch me. And you know how I'm a father. I have a 25-year-old son as of 2022, and kids are like, watch this, watch this, watch this. I'm gonna make this shot. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. And they want to please their parents. And I was a typical kid, and I happened to be good, so it was something that I did really well. And I never had family come see me. I imagine playing a whole childhood. I played 12, 13, 14 years of baseball, like 10 years of soccer, and then when I got in high school, I lettered in 4 sports: baseball, basketball, football, and golf. And but like my main sport was baseball. As a kid, I was excellent at baseball, and my mom, my grandmother, wouldn't come to my games. She said she got too nervous or whatever, and it really bothered me because as a parent, I mean, yeah, sometimes you get nervous for your child to do well, or if they're doing poorly, it's hard on you as a parent because you want them to do well and you feel bad for them. But I would never miss my son was a basketball player, but I would never miss his games if I could help it. And no matter if he's playing poorly or playing great, anything, that I wanted to be there for all of it and support him. So that was really hard for me. I never had anybody there. No matter how well I played, I could come home, and also it was hard because my mom was like 2 generations from me, so she couldn't even really relate to some of the things. If I said, well, I went 3 for 4 and I made 3 places, I played shortstop my whole life, and I made all these plays and this and that, she just go, that's fine, that's great, honey. And she always supported me and loved me, and paid for all my sports, but she couldn't really relate to what I was doing, and she didn't come to the game. So those 2 things really affected me. It made me feel like I wasn't, like I said, deserving of what everybody else had, and I didn't understand why me. What did I do? I was just a kid. I was a well-behaved kid. I always did what I was told. I came back at curfew. I always did everything, and well-behaved. And I didn't understand why, out of all the kids that I knew on the earth, which was in Sonoma, I was the only one like this, and I didn't know why, and I just thought it was super unfair, you know. Last note on that sports thing is that baseball was my sport. In reality, it was a team sport, and I needed somebody to pitch to me, somebody to play catch with me. I had needed 8 other kids to be on a team and all that, and that's kind of why I took up golf. Was I happen to be if any of you played, you know it's a very difficult sport, but I happen to be pretty natural at it. I mean, we all suck at the beginning, but I always joke that on my high school team, I played 4 years of high school. As freshman year, I was a beginner. I never played golf in my life, but I just sucked less than everybody else. So that's how I knew I was a natural. I just sucked less, but I liked the sport because I went out and practiced. I had a great work ethic when it came to sports, even as a child, and wanting to get really good. And I liked the sport because I didn't need anybody else. I went and putt and chipped. I hit driving range balls. I went, on the golf course and played, but I didn't need anybody else. So I figured out a way. One of my first jobs was parking golf carts at the country club in our town. I didn't have any money to play, so I went talk to the head pro, and I worked out a deal. I'd go pick cigarette butts in the parking lot and fill up the small cup he'd give me. He said, then you can go play. So he supported me playing because he knew I couldn't afford it, but he made me earn it, which I appreciate. So I did what I had to do, not having any money and being poor when I was a kid, to be able to get out there and play. And I practiced a lot because I couldn't afford to play much. So that's what got me to be a pretty good player, was I practiced a lot. Okay, the end part of story one is that, like I said, I felt like a black sheep. As far as I knew, I was like a test tube baby. I literally had no identity. I didn't have actual real parents to ask where I came from, and family. I had no family, extended family left. I had a grandfather that passed away when I was pretty young, but I had a whole other side of a family I didn't even know existed. And honestly, as a child, I didn't even think about it. I did not once think about who my dad was, because my reality is I just showed up and I was on the planet. I had no idea and no identity, and it really played a huge part on my confidence, or lack thereof, and being able to cope with things. I think when you have siblings, you learn to share and play and fight and all that stuff. It makes you a much more solid adult when you do grow up. And I was an only child. I wasn't spoiled because we didn't have anything, but I didn't know how to share very well, and I didn't know how to compromise very well. And there's things that I've learned, but it was really, really hard. But yeah, so that's the story of the first story I wanted to tell you that helped shape me probably to this day. Okay, story number 2 was started when I was about 18 and a half, 19 years old, and we were leaving Sonoma. I was going to junior college, playing on the golf team, and my best friend John was driving, and he had a old beat up huge Mercedes from Germany. He bought it as an investment and fix it up and sell it and make a profit. So it was like one of the first car flippers I ever heard of, and it was this big, huge, ugly car. But we went to a party. It was like a church party, so there wasn't any drinking. And actually, at 19, I still had never had a drink. I never smoked pot. I still haven't, but I had never had a drink or anything. So we were sober, but we went to kind of like a fun church party, and we were over by Vallejo, California, which is maybe an hour away from Sonoma or so, where we were. And we were heading home at 1 in the morning, and we were on a section of road that was probably 10 miles of just highway, not freeway, but highway. A light, traffic light once in a while, but no curves, just straight and super open, and just no dangerous curves, things like that. But it was exceptionally foggy. It used to get super foggy there because the water was close, and the Bay Area gets very foggy. And it was so foggy we couldn't see 5 feet in the car. And we were driving. I think back then the speed limit was 55, and we were going about 50. Which honestly was probably too fast because we couldn't see. I mean, if a deer walked, which there's no deer out there, but if a deer was in front of us, we would have never seen it. But we knew because it was an open, straight highway, 10-mile stretch with no curves. We were just going 50 and a 55. And we're just talking away. And this is actually also, for some of you younger people, it's before you had to legally wear seatbelts. Neither one of us had our seatbelts on. I was the passenger in the front seat. And we're just talking, and as we're talking, the car starts to glow, and it gets brighter and brighter in the car, and it was like, what's going on? I mean, it felt like maybe a UFO was descending on us or something. It was really weird. It's like remember, we're on the freeway, I haven't seen another car anywhere, and we're just going, and the car's lighting up, and I'm like, what's going on, and I'm the passenger, and I look back there, and I think it's like a car coming up behind us, and it's their headlights, and their headlights are shooting right into our car. And when I look back again for a second time, this car is about to hit us, and it's going at Mach speeds. And the only thing I know is I was like, oh no, and I put my hands out. I didn't have seatbelts on, and right when I was putting my hands out, this car hit us. And we found out later we were going 50, they were going 125. So that's like parking on the freeway and getting rear-ended at 75 miles an hour. But we were moving, and thankfully it had been raining a little bit, so instead of rolling, the car started sliding. He catapulted us from behind, and I don't know how fast. They think we went from probably 50 to probably 70 or 80. They don't know exactly, but it accelerated us, and we were just going and going, and we both like got smashed up on the into the front of the car in the windshield area because he hit us so hard. And as the car's sliding, it's this there's all these businesses, small businesses on the side of the road, and all I remember seeing is we're about to go into a country western bar, kind of a dive bar, and we're going like head first into this bar. At the last second, the car fishtails as we're about to go in it, and we're about to hit sideways into the bar, and we hit a telephone pole, and it flexed us and ricocheted us into the field, and we snapped that pole like it was nothing. And I've seen pictures of cars completely wrapped around telephone poles, but that's how fast we were going. We severed it like it was nothing, but we got lucky because it ricocheted us. And it turned out later, when I tell you the end of the story, when I went by that area, it's the only open lot where there's no business for miles, and we ended up perfectly in it. So it all happened, of course, super fast. When everything stopped, we were out in this field way out, and it was raining, super muddy and cold. It was wintertime, and I ended up in the back seat on top of my best friend John. We're both, and it snapped my seat flat, and we were in the back seat. Somehow we got thrown into the back passenger seat. As it turned out later, all the doors had been jammed locked except for the back right seat where we were. So I, all of a sudden, as I kind of like, this all happened, of course, in just a few seconds. So then I'm having a hard time breathing. I'm like, what's going on? I'm spitting up blood, and I end up on John. And so this is kind of a crazy story, but I open the door and it opens, and I try to get out, but I'm hurt, but I actually don't know what's hurt. I just can't breathe. And John's like almost shoves me out because I'm on top of him. It turns out he cut his head really bad, and he hurt his knee a little bit, but he walked away from it, almost no injuries, because he was relaxed, almost like a drunk driver. He was relaxed, so he didn't see it coming. I saw it coming, put my hands out. So I ended up crawling out, laying on my back, and I'm spitting up blood, and my shoulder's hurting me, and I don't know what's wrong. And we're talking. He's sitting in the passenger seat, like a couple of feet from me, just talking. And later on, he thought I died because I passed out of the pain I had. And what's crazy about the story is we weren't found for at least 30 minutes. Nobody saw the accident happen. The guy that hit us ricocheted into the field next to us too. And actually, before I passed out, he came over and he was drunk. And he's like, "Oh, what are you guys?" And he was cussing at us, telling us that we got in his way. And we were like just going, "What? We got in your way? How did we get in your way? We were just driving." But he was drunk. And but nobody found us because nobody saw it happen. But some people coming out of the country and western bar about a half hour later just kind of glanced over and they saw the telephone broken, but they thought they heard something but weren't sure because of all the music. So they called the cops. So basically I woke up to sirens, and it was a madhouse. People freaking out. My best friend thought I died because I stopped talking to him when I passed out. So I get taken to the ambulance, and it was like I've never been hurt, I've been to the hospital once for a tetanus shot when I stepped on a rusty nail. Besides that, I've never been to the hospital to visit somebody or been there for me. And I was over in the ambulance, and I was in a lot of pain, internal pain. And what scared me the most probably was the way they were acting towards me, like how serious it was. I didn't know what was wrong, and I don't know if they knew what was wrong yet. I would find out soon. But when I went to, like in the movies you see in the ER, there had to have been 13 people or more in this emergency room, and they're yelling, "Stat, get this, get that," and they're running like. So I know I was in really bad shape, and it actually scared me. I mean, I don't know how else they're supposed to act, but it scared me. So as I later find out, basically when he hit us from behind, my back hyperextended. If you were to arch your back all the way, hit me from behind till it snapped the wrong way. But I broke my back backwards. So I had 3 broken vertebrae that were in place but broken, and 2 crushed. So I had 5 broken vertebrae. I don't know which vertebrae they are anymore. I don't remember. It was when I was 18, but I want to say it's in the middle of my back, so not high and not low. So the next thing I know, I wake up, I'm in ICU. And if you guys know anything about ICU, they've got heart surgery down to where you only have to spend, maybe a night or 2 in ICU, and then you get to a regular room or bed. I was in ICU 3 weeks, so I was so close to death. I was laying on a broken back. I also broke my collarbone, which actually almost hurt more than my back. And I had internal bleeding. That's why I was spitting up blood. But I was in such bad shape. They're like, we need to fix your back, but you need to get enough strength to have the surgery. The surgery's going to be about 9 or 10 hours, so we need to make sure you're going to be alive and have strength to have the surgery. So I remember they drugged me so much that I only remember waking up and looking around 3 or 4 times in 3 weeks. So it's almost like they put me in a coma. But yeah, so about 3 weeks later, once I got stronger, they put me in a hospital room for about another week before I finally had my surgery. So I literally laid on a broken spine for a month, which was also super risky. So once I was in the hospital room, I was actually conscious. They weren't drugged. I mean, they gave me painkillers, but they didn't give me the kind that knocked me out. But I kept thinking, why me? It's just like when I was a child. It's like, why me? I've never had a drink in my life. Okay, you guys will not believe this, but this was when I got hurt. It's like in '83. I can't remember the exact year, but this is when Mothers Against Drunk Driving started, MAD, and there was no 3 strikes law that we have now. So I think about it now. I should have never been hit by this guy, because this guy, I was his 6th DUI, and he legally had his license. They used to give you like a $50 ticket when you got a DUI or whatever it was, and slap on the wrist. You never lost your license. Forget going to jail. And so I was his 6th DUI, and he legally had his license. So going back to what I said, it was kind of like when I was a child. I'm like, what, am I unlucky? Like, what's going on here? I've never hurt anybody. I've never had a drink in my life, yet I'm getting, I thought I was permanently injured for life. Like, one of the things that happened was, I told you I was a great athlete. Well, even professional golfers that don't have any back injuries end up having back problems, even like Tiger Woods has, just from it's a torquing kind of sport where you're twisting your spine. So when you have a healthy back, doing that your whole career hurts and damages your ligaments and your vertebrae and things like that in your back. And so it's hard enough to play the sport when you have a good back. But I thought, well, I was starting to play college golf and starting to get decent, because remember, I only started golf when I was a freshman in high school, so I'd only played like 4 years, and I was just starting to get decent. And I just thought, am I ever going to walk again? Forget golf. Like, I was thinking, I'm not going to play golf, but am I ever going to walk again? Am I going to ever be normal? Like, am I going to be paralyzed? Because my surgeon, when he came in to show me kind of the charts and what my damage was, where it was, and then how they were going to fix it, he told me, he goes, I hear you're a golfer. He's a pretty good golfer. I said, no, I'm okay. I got a lot better later, but I said, I'm okay. And he goes, well, you can give that sport up. And I go, what? And I thought that was horrible bedside manner, but he goes, you can give that sport up, because he goes, I'm a golfer and I'm not good, but he goes, it's a twisting sport, and you have 3 fractured that need to just heal in place, but 2 we're going to fuse, and we're going to put metal rods down your spine to create an internal cast and screw them into your spine to hold everything in place while you heal, and you're not going to be able to bend. And he goes, well, eventually take the rods out, but you can't be twisting and playing golf on that back over and over again. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? And he said, nope. So the one sport that I loved was now being taken away from me again. That mode where I was feeling sorry for myself, like, why is this happening to me? I did nothing. I'm almost 19, at the prime of my life. I finally got through all that school stuff. I was going to college, but like, I was getting on with my life and get to do something, and I couldn't get out of my own head why. So I had the surgery, and kind of interesting story about the surgery. It was like almost 10 hours, and I ended up, between the hospital stays and everything, I want to say it was 4 months in the hospital all total. And I had an unfortunate thing happen where they said when you go home and you're resting, just bend with your knees, don't bend with your back, because it puts pressure on those metal rods that are keeping your back, in place. And I went in the restroom to use the restroom, and I sat down with my knees and everything, but I heard a pop, and one of the hooks and one of the 2 rods that were wired to my spine came out of place, and it was like cutting me internally. So I had to get an ambulance back to the hospital. They did surgery again to put it in place, and then he put a body cast on me, so I had to have a body cast. But one of the hardest things for me was, not only was I feeling sorry for myself, but I'm tall, I'm 6'3", and I was like 193, and I was very thin, but I had really strong, thicker legs because of all the sports I played, running sports before golf. And so when I was in the hospital, one of the hardest things I had to deal with, not only was, am I ever going to be normal again, but I atrophied, and I went from 193 to 133, and I was scrawny when I went in the hospital. So I lost 60 pounds of muscle. So some of the things you don't get when you get victimized for people like this is, not only was I potentially never going to be normal again, but I looked horrible. And when you're naturally thin like I was when I was young, I was skinny. I mean, I could use the word skinny. Trying to get that weight back on was really hard. And obviously, you don't want to be fat, you want to have muscle, but muscle takes a long time. And I was out of all those youth sports where I wasn't running all the time. Now I'm playing golf. So it was really, really. So I came out of the hospital not only damaged and not knowing if I was going to ever be normal again, but I looked horrible. I wouldn't go outside unless I wore baggy clothes because I didn't want to show how skinny. I just looked horrible. So I couldn't even go see my friends. People would come and visit me at my apartment and stuff, but it was such a horrible time, and I couldn't understand why this happened to me. The end of the story was I did go testify against him while I had a body cast on, and what I found out about the guy, because I never really saw the guy hit me, he was only in his late 20s and he already had 6 DUIs, so you can imagine how many times he didn't get caught. And he only got caught because he hit us and totaled his car, but he borrowed a friend's car while he was waiting for this trial date for me to testify against him, because I was healing from the hospital and everything. He borrowed a car and hit another person and got a 7th DUI. And I keep thinking, I go, do any judges see any tendencies here? Like, nobody's taking his license away. That's how open the laws were back then. And I don't know what the laws were. I never studied it, but I think about it now. If it happened, I should have never got hit by this guy. I was a 6th DUI. He had double the legal limit of DUIs where you go into jail. So I testified, did a great job. I was nervous for that. I've never done that. Still have never done it besides that time. But he got 2 or 3 years for me, and then whatever he got for the person after me. So he probably got just as much or more for that. So, and it was sad. In court, he had a beautiful wife and a young daughter, and he obviously had such a bad problem. None of that mattered to him. He just had to drink and drive, and for some reason. So I hope he's better now. But yeah, those are the two things that for most of my life, until the recent years, really affected me. The way I feel about myself, the way I see things, and it's unfortunate, but that's kind of what the series is going to be about how we can't control what happens to us, right? That saying is, I think some people think it's corny, but it's so true. It's not what happens to us, it's how we deal with it, right? Because you can't go through your whole life and just be unscathed and never have people you love pass away, or people do you wrong, or you're not going to go your whole life and they say every person probably gets in one major car crash, if not more. So things are going to happen to you. It's just part of life, and we can't choose our parents or who raises us or who gives birth to us. But once we become adults, and hopefully we have time to face these kind of things. I know I forgot about it until later in my life, but I went to a lot of counseling. My mom sent me to a lot of counseling because she was worried about me having the loss of a birth mother. And we were supposedly really close, but like I said, I till this day don't have any memories of it. So that's what this series is about sharing our experiences. I'm sharing 2 personal things with you. I had a lot of other things. I've had a pretty crazy life. I mean, a lot of great things too. I mean, I have a lot of really amazing things that happen. So this isn't meant to be negative as much as that life happens, and I couldn't control those 2 things. I had nothing to do with it. They happened to me. And for the longest time, I felt sorry for myself. Woe is me, why is me? I've even gone through periods where I thought about suicide, not very seriously, but I've thought about it. And I don't know why we go there in our minds, like why we give that power to other people, the things that happen to you. Like this person that hit me in a car, I'm not angry at my birth mother. She couldn't help what happened to her, but I don't know why we give that power to. But that's kind of there's people, we're all different, right? So I went there, and I felt like I had this curse against me, and it's taken till I got older to realize that our happiness and what we do with that, yes, that's unfortunate, but what you do with it going forward. I mean, look at what I've done. I pursued professional golf, and I've traveled the nation in my 20s and early 30s playing the biggest amateur tournaments, the U.S. Amateur, the California State Amateur a bunch of times, been a club champion 10 or 12 times. I'm not bragging, but I'm saying that comes from where I was told from a doctor I'll never play golf again. So is it possible? Yes. If 100 people have the same accident I have, we're all going to come out different, right? So I'm an incredibly fast healer, so that's good for me. I think, I had the rods taken out. They told me it would be 2 years before I had those rods taken out of my back, and in about 4 or 5 months, they were taking x-rays monthly, and he said, you're 100% healed, but there's no medical way that you could be healed after 4 or 5 months. This is at least a 2-month healing process. And I said, well, please, going to have the rods out because I can't bend, I can't even move or do anything. And so they checked for a few more months, and I think at the 8th month mark, I had a surgery to take them out, and I was all healed. And it should have taken 2 years. So I was lucky in that way, you know. So it all depends on your perception and how you look at it. So I'm sorry for this video being so long, but there's a lot to both those stories. So lastly, uh, if you're in the situation or you've had something recently hard, or you're still harboring stuff from your childhood or midlife or things like that, just know you have complete control of it. For me, nature was the solution. That doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter if you want to through hike like I like to do and go super long distances, or if you want a day hike, or you want a car camp, or maybe you have a bad knee, or you're older and you can't physically do the things like hiking 25 miles a day in the mountains like I do. But you can literally drive in a car and go to the beach, go to the mountains, go to the desert. You could even just go to a park and sit on a bench and watch people. I'm in a park right now. That's why I apologize if there's noise in the background, but this is where I film a lot of my videos. But just getting yourself out. Nature for me was a healer, but it doesn't have to be nature. Find out what makes you happy. You could be like to crochet. I don't know. You can like to read, or you can, I don't know, go to every library in your area or things like that. So you can have a hobby. It doesn't have to be nature, but I found that nature is one of the best healer for all things. Okay, just like in episode 1, I have 2 challenges for you. The first one is, in just a few sentences, please, I want every single person to write down some of the hard things they've gone through. Don't give me the whole story, but like, you know, is it a loved one passing, or is it, I don't know, you could have lost a pet. It could be that you are like me and don't have parents, or things like that. But leave me a few things that was very like tough or tragic for you, and tell me if there's some ways that how did you heal, how did you fix. That'll help others see that we're all normal, we all have these kind of issues, and maybe solutions how you fixed it. And then the second challenge, again, instead of trees, I would love for everybody to give me a smiley face, because this was kind of a darker subject, a smiley face icon. So if you leave a comment, please do a separate one with just a smiley face. If you don't want to leave a comment, and you aren't one of those people, some people watch it on TV and there's no way to leave comments. Maybe you can go on your phone and just leave a happy face icon, and or emoji, I guess it is. I have to get with it. I'm 60 years old, but leave a happy face emoji. That tells me that you enjoyed the content and that you watched all the way to the end. And then the lastly is just please, this sounds silly, I ask every video to please subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell, but when I look at the stats, 90% of the people that watch are not subscribed. So this is going to be a long series. It's going to have some really great topics, things like simplifying your life, minimalism, healing, remaking yourself, and just living the life you want to live. There's going to be so many topics. I probably have 20 or 30 on the table that I'm thinking about doing. So please hit the notification bell and subscribe to. The notification bell will notify you every time a new video in this series comes out. And I've got a bunch of other hiking ones. I'm going to do some gear videos coming up. I may go on a short backpacking trip on the PCT just to get away. So sign up for all that stuff by subscribing and liking. And thanks for sitting through this long video. And from now on, we'll be going through some of these great topics to help us reach our dreams, to be happier, to simplify our life. There's going to be a lot of great topics we're going to go through, and I can't wait to share with you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.